Hey everybody, welcome back. I got Jamie Futrell with me here. Jamie, how are you?
I'm good, Daniel. I'm really good today.
It's nice to get to do this. Thank you for being willing to come out here to the farmhouse and sit down and tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, most people might recognize your voice from the radio. How'd
That's
you get
right.
into that?
Well, you ask, and I was just thinking about, wearing headphones and stuff. So I started in radio my senior year in high school,
Okay.
and I started working part time at a little radio station in Murray called WNBS. Pat Sajak from Wheel of Fortune
Okay.
once worked at WNBS in Murray. A lot of
Wow.
people don't know that he went to school at Murray State for just a little while.
Yeah.
But anyway, I worked at WNBS in Murray and got started on the on-air side of things and moved over to the news department, worked in the news department, and then eventually found the place where I would eventually stay for a long time, and that was sales. And so I stayed in sales. I worked full-time the entire time I was going to school at
Yeah.
Murray State. And then whenever I graduated from Murray State, was full-time in radio. And so actually came to work in Paducah for WKYQ in my senior year at Murray State. And Gary Morris, the general manager at that time, did not know I was still a full-time student. He knew I had attended Murray State, but he thought I had graduated. And he offered me the job, Daniel. And then while we're talking, and he says, he's explaining the hours. And I said, well, that's fine, except for I have class on Tuesday and Thursday. You have class. What do you have class for? And I said, well, I'm not graduated until, and he was like, ooh, I didn't know that. Well, wait a minute. I can't pay you what I promised you,
Oh,
and
no.
so he had to retract what he had offered me and everything. But that was totally okay because I was in sales, and it was just a I was going to get paid commission on everything, and so this was just like a draw against my commission, so it didn't matter. But anyway, I got started in sales, and the rest, as they say, is history. I've stayed in it all this time. This year will be I've been with Bristol Broadcasting for, I got to do the math here, 32 years now, and been in radio for 34.
So what initially got you interested or passionate about radio, and then when did it shift into that sales? Were you always kind of thinking of it as an avenue into sales?
Yeah. I started. I did had a role at Callaway County High School. Larry England, I owe so much to him, but Larry England got us involved in the high school television station. And so I was involved in the high school television station and loved that aspect of it. And we broadcasted the games and stuff like that. So as a result of that, that's kind of what got me interested in broadcasting overall. And then from there, I got interested in radio, and everybody told me, hey, if where the money is on the sales side. If you want to be where the money is, you got to be in the sales side. And so I went over to the sales side, and because I just enjoyed radio, I didn't really care what side I worked on. It was all fun to me, and so I thought, well, if that side makes more money, I'll just try that side out and see that side. And I did, and I did like it, and I did make more money, and so I just chased down, ran down that road.
Yeah, I haven't really got to know you very well, so it's kind of cool to get to hear a little bit of that backstory. Like, I've heard your voice on the radio, but I always wondered how you got into it. When did you start coming to Faith Center?
About 6 years ago, we had been doing the church shopping, I guess, church hopping, whatever you want to call it, kind of trying to figure out where it was that God wanted us to be, and kind of we just, it wasn't like that we had said, I would really like to go to Faith Center. We just was kind of frustrated that the church that we had went to, that we were going to, I just didn't like their viewpoint on a couple of issues that were very key to me. And I just told my wife, I said, I just don't want to go here. This is just not the environment that I want my family to be in. And so we just said, she said, well, where are we, kind of frustrated with me? Like, well, where are we going to go to church then? And I said, well, just today we'll go to Faith Center, and so we just drove to Faith Center, and it was kind of like, it was just like the answer for that day. It wasn't like it was like, this is where we're going to start going. It was the answer for that day. And I think she thought, okay, well, are we going to start going here? And I said, well, let's just see what God does. And I went that one Sunday and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I just felt God saying, this is the place. And oddly enough, Kimberly said that she felt like God said, you need to just just be quiet and let Jamie drive, kind of thing. And that's what we did. And we just fell in love with Faith Center. Just absolutely love it. I love how John Aiken has a passion for the Word of God and really wants to see people in the Word. Yeah. And I love that. We're not, we're not chasing anything else. That's what we're chasing. I love that.
Yeah, my dad has probably a very similar story to whenever they were at Heartland, whenever I was like a baby, he was just like, there's a couple things here that are missing. It can be kind of scary to like step out of what you're comfortable in. And then it's not only just you have like a family you're taking care of. And as a head, it's like there's a lot of pressure on that decision. But, you got to search your heart and see like, what is the Lord doing, and trust him, because that feeling's not for no reason. It could be yourself, but it also could be, the environment you're in. And so you have to really seek that out with him and trust him that he's going to lead your path. One of the things that really made you stand out to me was whenever you actually taught, and I actually went back today and listened to it, when you were talking about thought farms.
Yes.
And the mind, and how important it is whenever you sit there and think about something, and how I can start getting like ingrained in your thinking.
Yes.
And it really stuck out to me. What do you think about when it comes to your thoughts and your mind? What made that so passionate to you in that time? And do you still think about sermons like that today?
Oh, well, so I am... So, Daniel, part of, man makes his plans, but God orders his steps, right? So for me, my journey into advertising led me into understanding marketing and what makes people do the things that they do. Okay? So if you're going to get into what makes people do the things that they do, you're going to end up somewhere in the brain. You're going to end up studying the brain, understanding the brain. And so one of my mentors and that I have admired and really read his stuff is Roy H. Williams. Not Roy Williams, the basketball coach, but Roy H. Williams of Austin, Texas. And he's written a series of books called The Wizard of Ads. And Roy talks a lot about the brain and how the brain works and how the brain responds. And Roy he's much smarter than me, and he gets much deeper into the different concepts than I'm capable of doing. But once you start studying the brain, you start realizing why we do some of the things we do. And part of, like, for example, one of the things that people don't realize is nobody wants to be labeled as lazy. Okay, lazy's negative. All right, but in actuality, we're all trained to be somewhat lazy. Okay. Now, not lazy in the terms of we don't want to do anything, but your brain is naturally looking for the ways that it can lessen its energy use. A lot of people don't realize that the thing that burns the most calories every single day, okay, this is why if you look up, if I run a mile, how many calories do I burn? It's not very many, because what's burning the most calories? Your brain. Your brain's burning more calories than anything else that you do, okay? So your brain is constantly looking for ways to be more efficient. In other words, ways to be lazy. It does not want to consume all that energy. So it's God put your brain to where your brain would naturally look for the easy path. Okay. So as a result, your brain likes to push things down into your subconscious, because if it's in your subconscious, you're not thinking about it. Now, a great example of, well, what are you talking about, Jamie? Well, this is when we're headed somewhere, we're driving somewhere, and you turn left when you were supposed to turn right. Why did you do that? Because what was happening was you weren't paying full attention to where you were going, and your brain had taken over on autopilot, your subconscious, and your brain was driving you to work, and that's not where you were going.
Right.
Or your brain was driving you to grandma's, and that's not where you were going. You know what I'm saying? So your brain is just naturally does that. It's just doing that automatically because it's trying to be super efficient. Okay. Well, if that's the way that our brain works, then guess what? It's working that way, and because of the programming in our brain, because it's programmed to work that way, that causes our brain to end up looking for, it will work, utilize that system to work for us, or utilize that system to work against us. For example, somebody gets upset with you and they say, Daniel, you're just so stupid. And then you repeat that thought, and you repeat that thought, and you repeat that thought. And before you know it, that thought is part of your subconscious, and it's now influencing other thoughts in your head because you let it get up there. So that's why Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind." And we can renew our mind by studying God's word, which is the truth. And as we study the truth, then that ends up causing us to be able to reprogram,
Right.
to reprogram our thoughts. So yes, I'm all into the brain. I'm all into thoughts and understanding why we end up, thinking some of the things and doing some of the things. And this is why it's not easy for us to, if you've ever had a discussion with somebody and they're not seeing it correctly, but you can't get them to see it correctly, you may think, well, they're so stubborn. Well, that may be something that's deeply ingrained in this person. And that means, just going back to the thought farms that you were referring to that I talked about, that's not going to be something that's just like a switch you can flip and change. That's something that's going to take a great deal of unraveling in order to get that out, And so for me, there's a lot of bad programming that I'm 54 now, and it's taken a long time for me to get rid of that programming and change that programming, even though I can say that I knew the truth, but I wasn't walking in the truth because I was, I knew the truth, but I was still walking out a lie, even though I knew the truth, because I wasn't walking in it.
I feel like the enemy and even just our own flesh uses satisfaction to just shut off everything. Like, if we can just satisfy our flesh with our mind just entertainment. There's so much entertainment, so much noise, so much stuff to keep our heads full to where we don't really search out anything other than what we're being told or what we want to hear. And it's a really dangerous slope. And as someone who's struggled with addiction in my past, you don't even realize what you're getting yourself into with these steps you're taking. You know, you're just living your life. And then years down the road, you have this person inside you, ingrained inside you, that you've got to deal with. And I think there's some wisdom in taking that conscious step of realizing, like, what is in my mind? Like, and how do I change it? Because, you know, some people might have a miraculous change, but a lot of people, it's not going to be that immediate flip the switch. You're going to have to walk this thing out.
Yeah.
And it takes like you know, people see, I say it all the time on here, but people see Pastor John, or they'll see someone who's like far along in their walk, and they're like, how did they get there? Well, it didn't start today.
That's exactly right.
You know what I mean? It took them
right.
years and years and years to figure it out.
That's exactly right. And I noticed, Daniel, now that all of a sudden I've been walking this journey for a long time, and all of a sudden things are coming together that maybe they were input 20 years ago, and they're just now kind of coming together, gelling together. And so, yeah, you're 100% right. It doesn't just happen overnight. That's the enemy that's trying to make you be jealous or envious and think that, you know, that this is obtainable right now. No, it's a journey. Start walking it. How do you get there? Well, you take take a step today, and then you got 2 steps, and then 10 steps, and then 100 steps, and you trip and fall back, slide back a little bit. You get back up, and you keep walking, and you just keep going. That's what it is.
So let's journey back into your walk a little bit. Where did church life start for you? Did you grow up in church?
I did. I grew up at Scottsgrove Baptist Church in Murray. I was the youngest church clerk that they ever had. I was elected church clerk, and I was 16 years old when I was elected church clerk.
What is the responsibilities of a church clerk?
The church clerk has the enormous responsibility of keeping the minutes at the church meeting, and then you're keeping the membership roll, okay? And so you're the one that keeps up with, you know, who's a member of the church and everything. And so that was, for me at the time, I just thought I was, man, this is so cool, you know? And so anyway, my mom was a churchgoer. She was brought up Methodist, but we went to a Baptist church because she thought that might make my dad go. It did not, even though we were going to the church that his mom was a member of. He still didn't go with us, but that's why we went there. And so that's where I got started. I was saved when I was 13. I was saved in that church, you know, I've been in church all my life. Shortly after I got saved, I was the merchandise manager for a gospel quartet called the Shelton Singers.
Okay.
And we went all over the churches singing. I did not sing. I can't sing, but we went to all these different churches, and I was the merchandise manager. And so anyway, it was, I've just been in church for a long time and everything. And so really, my father was an alcoholic. He was, fortunately, he was not physically abusive, but he was verbally abusive. And to me and to my brother and to my mom. And so I really needed God. I just absolutely needed God. You know, you're talking about addiction, Daniel. My dad was an alcoholic. Both of his brothers were alcoholics. His dad was an alcoholic. All of his brothers and sisters but one were alcoholics. So it was you might say it was in the blood. And I had such a distaste for that. I was determined that I was not going to go down that path.
Yeah.
And so I gravitated towards church and towards God because I knew I would need help.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's exactly what I did. And I just chased the Lord, and I can remember being 13 and praying in church thinking, I'm going to ask God for wisdom because it seems to me like that if I have wisdom, I will have everything that I want, because if you're wise,
Yeah.
then what else would, you're going to know, you're going to be able to recognize the smart things and the things that you need and the things that you don't need. And so anyway, I've been in church all my life and sought a relationship with the Lord my entire life, and been very, very thankful.
Yeah, that wisdom is so important. That's like a heart of Solomon right there, where you're praying for a heart of, like, a mind of wisdom, because with that you can achieve everything else you're looking for. Was there a point in your life where you were like, I need like a spiritual father, I need like a mentor, I need, and what were the steps you took to find that?
I'm glad you asked that, Daniel. One thing I will tell you, this is, to me, the biggest, most life-altering things that's happened when I look back, and we're going to sound like this was our theme for the show, that man makes his plans, but God orders his steps. When I look back, I see that there was things that were the most fundamental changes in my life just happened by chance, and I do that in quotes, by chance.
Right.
Obviously, God ordered them, but they weren't anything that I could plan. They weren't anything that I could recognize. They weren't anything that I was like, ooh, this is a good place for me to be. I told you that I went to work at WKYQ. The way that came about was because I had formed a ministry called Jesus and Music Ministry.
Okay.
And we were going to pay radio stations to play Christian music.
Wow.
Okay, that's what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And we had a meeting at Scottsgrove Baptist Church in Murray, and we had invited, and he came to speak to us, the general manager of WKYQ, Gary Morris. And so Gary came and spoke to us. At that time, I was working for WCBL of Benton, the radio station in Benton. And so Gary and I made a connection, and that one meeting is where Gary and I met. We made a connection. He eventually offered me a job. I eventually go to work for him. And we were just, I'm going to say this on your show. I fell in love with Gary the way that, and men don't talk that way because that sounds weird, but, not romantically, obviously, but I just fell in love with the guy. I mean, he was a God-loving man, and I was just like, man, I need to spend more time with this guy. And so I did, and I had no idea that what would end up happening is that I went to work there in 1992, and in 1995, 3 years later, my dad took his life. And Gary, I did not know until he came to the funeral home and told me that his dad had committed suicide as well whenever he was 21. So I was 24 when that happened. Gary was 21. And immediately, I mean, just immediately, we already were connected. Now we have a strong bond. And Gary became a spiritual father for me. And I mean, honestly, I can tell you that if it were not for Gary Morris, I would not be the man that I am today.
Yeah.
I really used him, and he was there so many times in so many ways to impact me, to push me this way or to push me that way, or give me the advice that I needed or the correction that I needed or whatever. And oh my goodness, I would be a different person if it were not for him.
Yeah, I mean, the whole God ordering your steps thing, I'm still like seeking out a whole lot of, because I'm reading the Old Testament right now, and it's all God did this, God did that. And so I'm really trying to understand my own theology, I guess. But, you know, just hearing that story of how God was working in your life, you know, we like to give God glory whenever the good happens, but no one would wish like your dad to be an alcoholic or for him to have committed suicide or Gary's father to have done this, you know, committed suicide. But the way that God orchestrated y'all's paths to meet and for you to have that heart of like, oh man, I love this guy. Like that wasn't by that wasn't coincidence.
That's right. Oh yeah, Daniel, you're exactly right. And I'll tell you, you know, God it's just so obvious to me as the more I journey, it's just so obvious. And what I would say to anybody that's listening, that's going, okay, how does this apply in my life? Well, here's what I would say. Wake up every morning just looking for God. Just look for him. Wake up every morning looking for him. Look for the doors he opens and look and be careful of the ones he closes. You know, understand that, number one, understand that you can't, you know, you can make something happen. I know you can make something happen, but all of the long-term stuff that's really going to be the good stuff, you probably won't have anything to do with. It'll just be because you were in, as they say, the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, on the other side, we can mess things up, you know, and have a long-term impact because we did something stupid. But what I'm saying is just get up every morning looking for God, going, where do you want me to be, God? And what do you want me to do? Because I'm just telling you, the most impactful stuff will just happen. And just trust that whatever way it unfolds, just trust it, that God's got this. Because if you say, God, I'm following you, wherever you want me to go, wherever you want me to be, whatever you want me to do, I'm following you, then God doesn't go, are you serious? Do you know how many people I've got to take care of? I mean, that's not what God does.
Right.
God says, awesome. Okay, I've got it. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, we're supposed to do that in everything. And, you know, I love to tell people how to, you know, flip the story of Joseph, because we all know the story of Joseph, how his brothers sell him into slavery, right? And this is a great example of Romans 8:28, you know, and that is that for those that don't know it, Romans 8:28 says that God uses all things together for the good to them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So he uses all things. And I always ask, you know, does that mean all things as in like all the bad things that happen to me? Yeah, all things.
Right.
All the bad things that I do? You mean the stupid stuff? Yeah, all things means all things. He uses it all if we give it to him. That's all. Right. That's the only thing. We got to give it to him. But if we give it to him, he uses all things. So with Joseph gets sold by his brothers into slavery. He goes into slavery, and ultimately what ends up happening is Joseph ends up becoming number two in command, right?
Yeah.
And we know that story and how, wow, look at how God used that. But here's what a lot of people don't think about. The flip side. Joseph's brothers did an evil thing of selling their brother into slavery. Okay? And what did God do? God used the evil thing that they did. Remember, when they go to see their brother, they're starving.
Right.
So God used the evil thing that they did to save their lives, the lives of their wives, the lives of their children, the lives of their grandchildren. That's incredible.
Yeah.
God not only took the bad things that somebody did to Joseph, God took the evil things that the brothers did to Joseph and blessed the brothers
Right.
for the evil. That's an incredible God. How could
Yeah.
you not get excited about that?
Yeah.
You know, that's the God that we serve. So all we got to do is go, God, I'm listening for you. I'm your man. You just tell me where to go. You tell me what to do. You tell me where I need to be. And so as we do that, then God ends up, ordering our steps, and we end up finding ourselves in places that we wouldn't have found ourselves in otherwise, because I couldn't have sat out there and said, okay, I got to find a man that I can, that I can follow. And, that I just don't believe that would have worked. I could
Right.
pray about that. I could ask God to lead me, but I would just have to trust that God was going to provide. I can't make that happen.
Yeah.
And like with Gary, what ended up happening is that I had applied, I had been pursued by a investment firm to come to work for them. And they asked me if I'd be interested. I said, sure, I'll be interested. I'm working for Gary at the time. I said, sure. I go through, Daniel, the entire process. I go and I'm interviewed by this person, which gets me interviewed by another, interviewed by another, interviewed by another. I'm going through this whole process. They're telling me, throwing out these gargantuan dollar figures and stuff. And I'm just praying, saying, God, is this what you want? Is this where you want me? I want to be exactly where you want me to be. Mm-hmm. My next step was to go to St. Louis to be interviewed. And I'm thinking, okay, this is next in the process. And all of a sudden, right out of the blue, after I pray that prayer, asking God, you show me where you want me to be, I get a letter from the firm saying, we're not interested. And my wife says, this doesn't make any sense. Why would they just dropped you like you'd sent your resume in. They said, thanks, but no thanks. I mean, they've interviewed you all these times. Just a few days after that, Gary found out that he had cancer. And as soon as he shared that with me, Daniel, I heard God say, you're his Jonathan.
Wow.
And I knew, I had the peace of God. I knew that. The cool part was I'd never shared with Gary that job opportunity. I'd never, because nothing came of it.
Right.
So after that, I got to go in and I said, Gary, listen, I want you to know that God already knew this was coming. Before you knew, God knew. Because I want to tell you what God did. These guys are pursuing me. They're hot after me. And I prayed and asked God, where do you want me? And they send me this letter telling me they're not here. God wanted me here with you. And when you told me, he immediately told me, I'm your Jonathan.
Wow.
You can't put stuff like that together.
Mm.
You can't assemble pieces like that. Only God can put that together. And I personally think, Daniel, that one day when we get to heaven, God's going to put his arm around us and he's going to say, let me show you the work of art that I did with your life. Because I think we're going to play a role in the tapestry of God that we can't possibly imagine. And for me, for example, the way I see that is I told Gary multiple times he should have been bigger. He should have been more famous. He should have had a following. You know, I really felt that way. But I felt like that God held Gary back so that he would be there for me. What if that's what God's doing to so many of us who are so frustrated that we're not having, I don't know why I don't have many more followers, and I don't know why I don't have this, and I don't know. What if God's intentionally holding you back?
Right.
Because if he doesn't hold you back, you're going to miss the person that he's wanting you to see.
Right.
The person that you're supposed to be there for. Hey, we can't all be Taylor Swifts and
Right.
we can't all be Keith Urbans. We can't that just can't be the case. Okay? So the reality is that God, what if with all the talent you've got, God's intentionally block some of it because there's somebody else that's special that God's put in your life, that he wants you to use you to make an impact. And what I kind of think, God sees the best in us. So I kind of think that what happens is, I have a wild imagination, but I kind of see it, Daniel, that God and the others are sitting around there and they're saying, well, if we could have Daniel, if we could hold Daniel back from this, then he would end up making an impact on Jonathan here. And God said, Daniel will do that for me. Don't you just go ahead and put that into place. Daniel will do that for me. He's my boy.
Yeah.
Because God sees the best in us, and he's thinking, Daniel won't mind at all. He'll give up that $1 million. That doesn't matter at all to him. He'd much rather be my servant.
Yeah.
And here we are, I don't understand why does so-and-so have so much and I don't? Or why does so-and-so get all of this and I don't? And,
Yeah. It's so easy.
It is so easy. It is so easy. And, well, what if, I'm not saying that God doesn't want good things for us. I totally believe that God wants good things for us. But I'm talking about extravagant things that most of us think if we don't have these extravagancies,
Right.
we're not getting the good stuff. When the reality is, you and I both, there's billions of people in this world that would say you and I both already won the lottery,
Right.
Because we were born in America.
100%.
We were born in America, the richest country on the planet.
Yeah.
And so most people would say, most people around in other parts of the world would say, man, you guys are so blessed.
Yeah, we're sitting here in front of microphones, chit-chatting with coffee, and
Yeah, exactly.
And we got full bellies, or we can if we want to.
Yeah.
We have a choice.
Yeah,
to eat.
when was the last time you had to go through the garbage to find food to eat
Right.
because you were that hungry? Yeah.
It just takes like a totally different perspective than the world wants you to have, and that's a perspective of humility. A few things stood out in what you were talking about. Some things we need is humility, faith, obedience. And there was one other thing, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but that humility, that humble heart, because I've been reminded a few times, I've gotten specific words while doing this podcast, do not despise humble beginnings. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this for the followers? Or am I doing this for the Lord? Whose is it? Whose podcast is it? Is it Daniel's? Or is it the Lord's to do whatever he has? So if it is, 30 listeners, if it's 30,000 listeners, whatever it is my heart in the right place. And it's a specific word I've gotten a couple of times that I really reflect back on and remind myself, like, whatever the Lord has, I want to surrender to. And that surrendering, it can be kind of hard sometimes because we do look at what people of the world have, or what this person has, or what that person has. And maybe God's purpose isn't that for you. Maybe he's got another avenue. And when we find that path, it's going to lead to good things. It just might not be the exact same way we saw it.
Oh,
you know
exactly.
what I mean?
Oh, exactly. I think the hardest thing, Daniel, for me, and so, I may sound like I got it all together. I don't. One of the things for me that's been my big struggle is that as God took me to the next place, I immediately imagined all the grand things that were going to happen.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, now that I met this person, it probably means that this is going to happen and this will happen. And then one day I will be on the cover of this magazine, I mean, that's the way that my brain works, and then, I think God just laughs and goes, no, son, that's not it at all. And I'm so stubborn, I won't give it up. And so I think he goes, okay, if that's the only way I can get you to move forward, I'm going to let you keep that idea, but that's not it.
Right.
And unfortunately, because you're going to keep that idea, it's going to hurt a little more when we arrive at the location we're destined for. And so what I've had to try to learn is not to have, instead of dreaming of, ooh, I bet this is what the future looks like. What I found instead that works so much better is imagine 20 possibilities of the future.
Right.
And then you won't be as disappointed when it doesn't turn out to be this one thing. It could be that God's doing this. It could be that God's doing that. God took me to Orange Beach, Alabama. I'm there with a famous author. I'm thinking that I'm there because this is God's opening doors for me. This is pretty famous guy, and man, God's got me here. This is pretty cool. Man, wonder what all is going to happen. I'm imagining being on Good Morning America, being interviewed. I'm doing all that because I'm that arrogant and I'm that foolish, and so I'm doing all that. And, I just continue to walk through the doors that God opens, and I don't realize it at the time, but one of the guys that I made connection with, his name was Benny Dalzell, and I make a connection with Benny, and after the event's over, I continue to stay connected to Benny, and within a couple of years, we're talking, and he's decided to retire, and within a year of his retirement, he's got cancer. Benny had never been married, had no children, and just this year, Benny passed away.
Wow.
And I realized that I look back and go, wow, all the stuff that I thought was going to happen didn't come to pass, and this moment worked out. It may have been that my entire purpose of being there was to make a connection with Benny. And if I hadn't have been open to, God, what doors are you opening? Where are you? Where are you, God? Where are you? I'm looking for you. Then I might have missed what I was supposed to be for Benny, because I know that God used me.
Right.
I know that he used me with Benny. And so that's why it's so important, because, our life is not just, my life is not just about Jamie Futrell. That's not what it's about. It's about more than that. And like I said, what if God said, look down there, and he said, there's Daniel Robbins. He's got this much talent. I could use him for this, but He's okay. I can hold him back. He'll do it for me. You watch. Daniel will do it for me.
Yeah.
And, I just think I just think we end up happier if we just spend our time looking for him instead of spending our time imagining all the marvelous ways that we're going to be famous or rich or have everything we ever wanted or whatever the case may be.
My brain does the big imaginations too. So I'm in that same boat where I'll go all the way to left field and think of all the grand things. I think the idea of thinking of it in more than one possibility, not just this one idea, is a good help for people. And also be like guarded with your heart, because sometimes people will tell you stuff. I'm sure you got people telling you like throughout this process, Jamie, you're gonna soar to the top, man. I'm sure there was somebody in your ear, and I've had people give me prophecies over like things about this podcast being something, and it's like I want to be careful with that, because I want it to be from the Lord, and that constantly seeking Him in everything, because seek Him in the now, not in the like 10 years from now, Lord, this is where I'm gonna be. Like seek Him in the now and watch what He does. There's so much more fulfillment in our lives with our families and our kids and our loved ones and touching people, because like you're the first person at our church that people go to after they've been saved on Sunday morning. You're the first point of contact. That's more fulfilling than being on the cover of some magazine. You know what I mean? And so God orchestrates these paths in our lives to really use us. And it's so much more fulfilling that way. And I think it is so important. You've been saved for a long time, and something I've been saved since I was a kid. Did you ever find yourself having to come back to that surrendering moment of like, Lord, I'm off track? What did that situation look like, and what did you do in that situation?
Yeah. So Daniel, I find, if I'm truly honest, I find myself, it seems like, I walk the journey and I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. And that's when the Lord takes a 2x4 up the side of my head and He says, I want to show you a few ugly things that I'd like to clean up, And then I realize, oh, wretched man that I am, some things that I've struggled with for a long time, some things that, I didn't know were bad, some things that I see as bad, but I've kind of ignored them. So all of that's there, and I'm just constantly aware of that. But one of the things that has helped me most was, we don't have time for me to explain how I got to this place, but Bob Warren's Romans study has made a powerful impact on my life. And one of the things that really helped me is that Bob talks about that, all you've got to learn how to do is say, Jesus, help. And I think the most powerful thing, and I hope this will be freedom for some people that may be listening. We try to, walk the right path, make the right decision, be more disciplined, be more obedient, walk better. And we try to do that. But if you're trying to do that through effort, you're actually doing that in flesh. What really has to happen is I just go, Jesus, help. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Jesus, help. Jesus, help. That's when we know that our life is altered, it's changed, and it didn't happen through our own fleshly efforts. Because there's probably a lot of things that you can make happen, but you won't be able to keep doing it because it's your flesh. And the reality is if you could clean yourself up, you don't need Jesus.
Wow.
And so you can't. It is something that the enemy works hard to try to get us to think that we can.
Yeah.
Oh, if you tried harder, if you would just try harder, Jamie, you're just not focused enough. Jamie, you're just not trying hard enough. You don't have enough mentors. You're not attending church enough. You're not praying enough. You're not. All of that's effort.
Right.
Fleshly effort.
Yeah.
So when I hear that condemning voice, I know that's a lie. Because Romans 8:1, there is no condemnation. So I know that what I have to do is just keep saying, hey, God, Jesus, I need you. Jesus, I need you. Jesus, I don't think right about this subject. Jesus, I need you.
Right.
Jesus, I just don't have it. There are times when my brain is just in the wrong place, whether it be because of inheritance, genetics, whatever you want to call it. One of the things I have struggled with is depression. I struggle enormously with depression. And somebody may say, well, hey, look at the suicide in your family. That's probably, part of it. Maybe. So there's a lot of times that my brain is just not functioning the way that it should.
Yeah.
And that's when, Daniel, I just got to go, Jesus, help. Jesus, help. Help me. I'm not seeing this the right way. Jesus, help. And the awesome thing is Jesus doesn't go, are you kidding? That's as fancy of a prayer as you can come up with? I mean, you couldn't pray a little longer? I mean, that's not the way he works.
Right.
He immediately says, I'm here, son. I'm here. And he immediately starts helping me to see things that I couldn't see and helping me to change things that I couldn't change. And, I think that's part of the reason why, God used the path to lead me into the study of the brain through advertising and ultimately through so many other things now. And as a result, I understand how my brain works so much more now. And because of that understanding, this is my brain playing a trick on me. Yeah. This is not who Jamie is, because your brain is part of your flesh. Your mind is part of your soul.
Right.
So my mind goes with me. My brain does not. So my brain's got some yucky ruts in it that ends up messing up my mind sometimes. One day I will be free of that
Right.
fleshly part of me. But until then, I have to ask God to help me to reconform my mind so that it's not like my brain.
That depressive state, it can be so hard to ask for help, even from God. Like, the last thing you want to do is ask for help. You just want to, almost live in that, sad, depressive, ugh. It's like when you get sick. Sometimes when I get sick, I struggle to pray for healing because it's like you're praying for healing and your nose is just going 100 miles an hour. You're just I deal with nasal stuff sometimes and just congestion, and it's like it can be where you're at. But it's the same thing with that mental game. Whenever you get to that depressive state, it's like you don't want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to better catch it? What are some things you do to
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do know exactly what you mean. I mean, I freaked my wife out one day because she's asking me what I do when I get depressed, and I gave her this playlist of songs that whenever I get in a certain mood, I go to this playlist that's the saddest. I mean, it would if you weren't depressed before, it would make you depressed, And she's like, "Oh my gosh, you play this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because it's where I want to go." But it's kind of like a pig. I kind of want to wallow in the slop for a minute.
Yeah.
That's kind of what ends up happening. But part of what's helped me in my journey, I think, Daniel, is number one, first and foremost, is just learning to be able to say, Jesus, help. Because there's so many times that's all I can say. I can't say, Jesus, get rid of the depression that I'm struggling with right now. I can't say that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm not even feeling that.
Right.
I'm not even wanting to get out of the depression.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
I know. I know that feeling. The fact that you even talk to your wife about it shows trust, and it's hard to talk to your wife about that kind of stuff.
It's hard to talk to anybody about it because so many people think that when you start talking about depression, oh, you're a Christian. You're not supposed to have depression, or you're
the happiest guy ever.
Yeah, you're supposed to be cheerful and happy all the time. Or if you're having depression, then it means that he's off.
Right.
And so I mean I think it's a taboo issue, but for me. There's so many times when I couldn't pray what I needed to pray. So all I could pray is just say, Jesus, help. Jesus, help. And that got God to take me down this path, take me down that path, help me pull out something. Whenever I would do that, Daniel, almost every single time something happens, somebody calls me, somebody walks in the room, something happens, just something would happen. God would show me I'm here.
Yeah.
And as a result, then in my more lucid times when I'm thinking straighter, God would show me, hey, I want to show you something about the thought process you had the other day. I want to show you something. And one of the things, and I'm going to say this with great trepidation because I don't want somebody to think that what I'm saying is that everybody's selfish. But here's what God showed me is that my depression was about my victimness. And my victimness is about selfishness. Ultimately, it's me thinking that everything's supposed to be about me. God, why aren't you making me happy? God, why don't I have this? God, why don't I have that? God, why isn't this going right for me? Why isn't that going right for me? You're not taking care of me like you take care of this person. It's ultimately all about me.
Right.
And even the thoughts, even the times that I've had thoughts of suicide, that's about me. Hey, I don't like it down here, so I'm leaving. We need you. Yeah, too bad. It's about me. It's not about y'all. Life is all about me. And that's ultimately what that's about. It's about making everything. And so once God kind of helped me to see that, that's really helped me to recognize, okay, all right, I don't want it to be all about me. I've got to change this mindset of making everything about me and making everything about, what I want and everything. So I think ultimately back to what you asked me, and that is just that prayer of Jesus, help. Jesus, help.
I just think any kind of advice, not everything's going to fit for everybody. Everyone's got to figure out their own thing. But just with the suicide thing, I've had multiple people on who've struggled with thoughts of suicide. We've all lost people who've done it. And if you could never ask the family of someone who's lost someone to suicide, man, weren't they selfish? But you see the pain that those families go through. I have someone I went to school with, his sister is on Facebook every other day posting about him. He killed him. He committed suicide a few years ago. And so you just see the devastation. If they could have seen past their lives for just a split second,
Right. That's
to
exactly
see
right.
the pain that their families would have gone through, they would have never done it. But they don't think about that because they're
That's
too
exactly
busy
right.
thinking about the misery.
Right.
And it is selfish. And I know that we want to be cautious with saying that, but it really is. It's self-loathing. You're just constantly focused on yourself.
Right.
And it's a different kind of selfishness. There's obviously different forms of it. It's the worst kind of form because it drives people to commit suicide. But it can't be talked about enough. I think people really need to, if anything, just ask Jesus for help. If nothing else.
That's right.
Because sometimes you don't have anything else. And God is so good
right.
to meet us where we're at and see our
Yes.
hearts.
Yes.
Because while our mind is telling you, you're stupid for praying that, you can't think of something more. Why don't you bring out some tongue? Whatever the lie of the enemy is in that
Right.
moment,
Right.
God
right.
sees past all that, and he sees your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God
Mm-hmm.
that he's able to love us even whenever we fall so short.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
is there anything else you want to share with the people before we get off here?
Well, I appreciate so much, Daniel, this opportunity, to come and share with people. And, I think that, I guess the thing I would say in closing is that one of the things that's helped me is that in studying God's word and everything is that there's 66 books. They all fit together. Okay? And there are times when it feels like that they are contradicting one another.
Yeah.
And when you run across one of those times, when you come to a place in life where it looks like God's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, this didn't turn out the way God said it would turn out. This is not the way it should be. It just means you don't know enough yet. And if you can keep that in mind, because God's always truthful, he's always comes through. And so if something doesn't come together, if it says, over here one thing and it says over here another, and they seem to be in contradiction, and you're like, how could this be? This is just a book of contradictions. No, you don't know enough yet. And when you know enough, then it'll make sense. But we have to remember, God said, my ways are not your ways. My ways are higher. When an egg and a sperm come together, they form a single cell. That cell multiplies into 2 cells, then into 4, then into 16, 32, and on and on. At some point, all those cells are exactly alike. They're all identical. But at some point, some of those cells start turning into muscle. Some of them turn into blood cells. Some of them turn into bones. Some of them turn into tissue. Some of them turn into skin. And guess what? Scientists can't explain how the cells know what to become. They have no idea how that happens. It's a miracle. God can't explain everything to us.
Yeah.
There's just some stuff that we just got to go, okay, I don't know how this is. And so if you can remember that, it's just a lot easier. Life's a lot easier if you can remember we're not going to be able to understand everything.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like we pray and we do all, and as some of us have known God for so long, we forget that he's God. Like,
That's
let
right.
God be God
That's
in
right.
your life.
Yeah.
He's God.
That's right.
We don't have to know everything. The Bible tells us we're not going to know everything.
We're not going to.
We're never going to discover it all.
I prayed, and I know I said at the end, but I prayed, since you said that, Daniel, I told you I prayed and asked for wisdom. So almost every decision I ever made, I prayed and asked for God's guidance on. So when I'd ask for guidance from God and then the idea, whatever it was, didn't turn out, guess who I blamed? It wasn't my fault. That was God's fault, I was like, God, you messed this thing up, and it took me a long time before I realized that you know, even though I prayed about everything, I wasn't still it is impossible to make every decision right. Even if you pray about every decision, you're not going to be able to make every decision right. And I'm fighting it out with God one day, and God said, Jamie, you can't possibly make every decision right, because then you would be just like me.
Right.
You'd be God. And guess what? Your vessel is not big enough to contain me. So therefore, it's impossible for you to make, even if you pray about it, it's impossible for you to make every decision right. So if you can remember those things, that you can't make them all right, God's bigger than you, you can't, things are just not going to make sense. Boy, that goes on. And Jesus' help, boy, you've already got a head start.
Yeah, and I think this ties in perfectly. I had Jonas Niehoff on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about gratitude. Be thankful for what you do have. Don't forget that we are in the 1%, just being here in America. And we do have it. We do have a lot. And so while we're searching for so many things, and I'm sure there's a lot of needs out there, everyone's got a need or a want, something that they could use right now. But don't be forgetful and not gratify the Lord and give him glory for what he's already done, what he's doing now, what you do have in your life.
That's right.
So
That's right.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. I
really
appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
God bless you.
All right. I'll talk to y'all next time.